Welcome to my channel. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'm here with another presentation. Today we're going to focus on street culture, collective capital, and Black women's economics. This channel is politics, economics, education. Again, we're going to reclaim power through policy and strategy. And through this presentation, I hope that Black women who can tune in and understand the information will be better guided for their homes, their careers, their endeavors in the US, and learn from this information so that you can progress forward and again contribute to the greater society, which is the US. Now, this isn't for everyone. This is not for everyone. I'm gonna try to keep repeating that at the beginning of my presentations. This is definitely specific to Black women so that we can understand why we are at this point and things that we can do to help our situation out and create allyships, create, help to influence policy strategy. So even if you're a young Black woman and you're trying to look as far as your career, politics, there's a few other careers in trade or in some of the STEM fields that you can look into, but everything at the end of the day kind of ties into each other, especially when we're talking about the Black women that are entrepreneurs out here. We have to start thinking high revenue. So think of your Amazons or your Apple companies. Think of the big, I don't know, manufacturing companies, processing. You want to think big as an American woman, right? In the next decade, 5 to 10 years, and even beyond that. But we're just going to try to, focus on that. And then, we cannot allow ourselves to cut ourselves off from resources. It's unfortunate, but the community has been dealing with policy issues that affected us, and we didn't pay attention. We voted blindly. We even got off course with what we should have focused on. Crime has affected our progress as well, so we can no longer be in denial. I have never been in denial, but we can no longer be in denial because the information is out here, and I'm just here to again lay it out and present it to you in hopes that Black women who are understanding this information can go out and do our thing, right? So let's get into this presentation. Picture this: a Black woman rolling up to the gate to her storefront before sunrise. She's juggling inventory, security alerts, and payroll worries. This isn't just about one store. It's about how policies, crime, economics, and community culture intersect on our blocks. Since 2008, we've carried the highest labor participation of all women in America, according to the US Department of Labor, but we're also the most underpaid, just 64 cents for every white man's dollar. The imbalance sets the stage of how every policy lands on us the hardest. All right, let's go to the next slide. The hidden tax of keeping it real. Okay, we've been told street culture is loyalty and survival, but in the ledger, it shows up as cost. Vandalism, intimidation, and lost customers hit small businesses hardest. Research from the National Bureau of Economic Research shows crime clusters slash foot traffic and drive businesses out of high risk corridors. For a Black woman running a restaurant or salon, one smashed window can wipe out profit margins for weeks. Culture becomes a hidden tax that we are forced to pay. So, Black women, we can no longer sit here and continue to participate in a subset of culture to keep it real, to protect certain people who affect our money. You have to look at this from a money perspective, a policy perspective. If you're not progressing, we cannot also look at it as, oh, slavery or, oh, this from the past, right? We have to focus on what has affected us and why did we vote and not understand the policies. Why haven't we pushed or promoted young women to go into certain fields so that we can continue to get into law, legal field? And I know we have some judges for the past few years. We have lawyers, but we need more congresswomen, Senate, women in the Senate. That means the black women who are in your communities. I know there's black women who like to help the homeless, but some of you should probably start running for seats, because how I see it, when you're from the bottom, you can kind of understand what the bottom needs being someone at the top. Now, you keeping it real, black women, has cost you. It has cost us. You being loyal to people, to your man, to somebody else's man, to people who are just toxic. Your family in general could be toxic. I'm not saying everyone, but just your family dynamics can be very toxic, and if we're not looking at how this is affecting us money wise, and we're just bringing out emotion, meaning just when we see stores closing in our community and we're telling ourselves, oh my God, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Because we're being blind to the crime. We can't look at all crime and say, oh, well, we have to see what white people are doing. We got to see what Asian people are doing, or we have to see what Hispanic people are doing. We have to stop thinking like that, because at the end of the day, the US is going to look at each grouping of people as far as Americans in order to get its data, in order to do what it needs to be doing. Now, there may be other communities that are experiencing, crime rates, but if we're being in denial, if we're keeping it too real, meaning we're allowing a subset of black people affect us, then that's going to affect your money, your job opportunities, because now all of those businesses have been leaving your community. And what you do, you got older people there who need to have access and resources. Your resources are leaving, training, all that stuff is leaving. So keeping it real is not something that we need to take as a fact. Sorry about the background noise. But keeping it real is not something we want to continue moving with as far as our mindset, how we think, how we move. When keeping it real, there's times to keep it real, right? Meaning you're researching some facts, and you're not just basing it off opinion, but you're researching stuff. You're going out there and you're like, yo, I'm not going to be in denial. When you're focused on your finances for your home, you have to look at it. Can I afford new shoes for my children or whatever? Is that going to cut into the food budget for the month? Especially if your career hasn't taken off just yet. So it's important to stay grounded. It's important to stay disciplined and not worry about this subset of culture that wants you to keep it real, but it's affecting your money. And when we keep it so real, we don't understand the ripple effect of it. Okay. We don't understand how this affects your insurance, your health insurance, or just your life insurance, right? It affects the real estate in your community. Again, I'm not here to point to the systematic issues, the policy issues, as far as saying, that's why I can't do XYZ. I'm here to lay this out so you can be more empowered to know, okay, this is where we may have went wrong. And this is why we cannot continue to support a subset of culture no matter what, because it is affecting us. We can't be out here lying about what's going on, right? And we don't see any changes year after year after year. Crime is picking back up. Again, if we focused on what's going on in our communities and stop worrying about everyone else and what they're doing and saying, oh, they're doing it too, and oh, we're this and we're that, we can't be thinking like that moving forward, Black one. We got to keep it real, and we have to scale ourselves up in every which way possible, on every level possible. And all it takes is discipline to do that. Okay. So we can no longer be loyal and we can no longer sit in survival mode. A lot of us are still in survival mode. Why? Because we have not learned how to be disciplined. Whether that's your relationships, I don't really like to get into relationships like that on this channel, but whether it's that, it has to be disciplined enough that you're saying, I cannot uh, birth another child right now because economically it's not making sense. If you have student loans or whatever, you cannot let the pressures of your family, who may not be financially well off, your mother and father cannot take your grandchild all the time, especially if they don't have it. So you have to really think about this keeping it real logic that taxes the hell out of us internally outside of everything else. So, again, this is why it's very important for us to have a new mindset in the way we move forward from here on out. Okay. Now, the silence economy. Now, I did speak in a few presentations before about just being silent, the no snitching policies we have amongst our community, and why Black women cannot play into that logic, why you cannot, sit in that, and reporting crimes is important. Speaking up for the young is important. Young Black girls, you got to speak up for them. You know, and because you don't, it costs us in death, meaning a lot of young ladies who are prominent and should be, moving on with their life are having to deal with us keeping it real, being silent. We don't want to churn people in. Like, we can no longer move like that because it's costing you your money. I'm telling you now, you got to be about, if you're going to be about your community, you got to be about the economics as well. This is why I'm here to tap into these areas so you can understand. Now, the so-called no snitching code, it's more than a slogan. It's an economic chokehold, Black women. The Department of Justice reports that for every Black woman who reports sexual assault, 15 don't. So we went into that in the previous slide, but I just want to continue to reiterate why that's affecting us in our economy, in our own community economy. When silence protects offenders, risk goes up, and lenders, insurers, and landlords quietly mark our communities as unstable. That risk pricing bleeds into higher premiums, loan denials, and fewer lease approvals. The silence meant to protect us has turned into an economic penalty. So we cannot look at this from always a lens of someone's being racist against us. This is why we have to smarten up. This is why when you go to school, you do not come back to your community. You do not come back to people in the subset of your community, even if it's family, and dumb yourself down. You disciplined yourself to go out there to make a better life for yourself. Yet, when you talk to your people, you dumb yourself down. You can no longer care about someone calling you, thinking that you're better than them, or people saying you think you're smarter than them. You can no longer allow that defeatist mindset attack you, where you're not seeing the cost of not getting some of the things you need. Now, we are Americans, right? So going to get these loans or all this, policy changes, these things that affect us, local civic power, these things are affecting us. We do not have enough Black women backing up other Black women in these areas because of certain mindsets that we continue to harbor in, you know, and it affects us. We got a lot of women who are untrustworthy amongst each other now, more than ever, because we have people who are going against their own beliefs. But when I'm laying this out, this is for you to understand this is the issue. These are issues that we can clearly point to and back up with some type of scientific data to say, you know what, outside of whatever system that's happening, this is also that's happening internally. So if you're not talking about this amongst other Black women who want to go and pursue higher education or a better career or entrepreneurship or whatever she's trying to do, if you're not talking amongst those women or have those type of friends, then it's going to cost you. I'm telling you now, it's going to cost you. You know, I have definitely been someone around people, and or I'll just say other Black women, and at some, at an early age, I knew to not be around these people, but I guess in a way, I wanted to quote unquote keep it real, right? Now, I didn't try to adopt everything. I just have my own personality. I like a few different things, but we have too many Black women who want to say this is the model of the Black woman. This is how we have to look and have to sound and have to move and have to protect our men more than protecting ourselves or our daughters. This is why this is happening. Allowing people into your house who does not show progress as well, or allowing people around you who do not show any progress affects your money. So when I start cutting off these people more and more and stop listening to them, I started to make more and more money. I started to focus more on my craft and the things I want to do for myself, you know? So this is very important to understand why you're also being affected in your community by keeping silent on crime or, the subset who doesn't want to do anything. Now, how capital reads a map. Banks and insurers don't debate culture. They look at maps. So it's not about your culture. It's not about white culture. It's not about Asian culture. It's not about Hispanic. That's your thing amongst ourselves. That's amongst ourselves. And it needs to be cleaned up. We cannot sit here and deny that it looks, trashy, presentable. We can also help that people like to just post it. People like to talk about it or whatever issues they have, right? We cannot look at that as that's our personalities as a definition. So again, we're not here to debate culture. Banks and insurers are not that. Every time you go and you get denied, you can't just blame it on, um, hey, because I'm Black, right? Now, there is data to support those things, right? But are we looking at other factors that may be affecting why we're not getting that stuff? And that's why I feel it's important for you to pick a career, stick to your education so you can leave certain community area, certain environments that you may be in, so you can get the hell out of there. And then maybe you'll fare better because when Black women are, again, number one, single Black women are the ones who buy homes the most. That means we have to be out of those areas, right? We're traveling more. We've been traveling, we're doing a lot of things. And I'm saying the women who are, we don't have to scrape up money, and think about paying our rent or giving up a utility bill to go travel because we're making a good paying salary. So we have the money to budget better. We have the health care based on our benefits. We have all of those things now. So we don't have to scrape up and say, well, I'm going to live my life, but yet you're still poor, right? We have a lot of Black women who just operate in a poor mindset and don't understand why they're poor. Your net worth is not even high. I think it's about $5. Why? Because you want to help everyone as well. You should think of this as how the capital, how the banks, how insurance, private pay, private equity, whatever it is, how that's affecting me. So you have to think differently. A 2019 Urban Institute study found that 25% of urban crime is concentrated on less than 5% of street segments. Those corridors see lower small business survival rates. In wealthy areas, one smash and grab triggers media attention, patrols, and reopening. In lower income black areas, repeated smaller incidents lead to boarded up shops. The difference isn't morality, excuse me. It's capital moving where maps say risk is lower. So why you got to think why in our community are we being affected more by crime or theft, break-ins? Why is that happening? Why are people in our community even going into stores that are there to at least supply jobs? So when stores leave, you got to look at it as, man, we done lost some jobs. So who's going to fill in for that? Our counterparts have not put anything together where, again, they're not putting out 50, 60, 70, 80, 100K jobs. This is why I need you, Black women, to think differently here. I need you to see things not the same as your counterparts, but as a way to participate and assimilate with the American economy, right? How we got to move together differently if we want these things to change. Better protection, better policies, working with the law enforcement, working with judges. That's why you have to understand who's the new judges, who's the police chief, who are these people running for offices or positions, and do they align with what you're doing? We cannot be following, you can, again, your beliefs should be personal enough so that when someone is trying to use that, you can't be voting on them because they say they're a Christian. You can't just vote on them because of that. Because you can see that regardless of them being Christian or not, they still fail the people in that community. Or again, the immigration policies became the focus and not your community and what you need to do or the help you needed, right? So we have to see this as issues that, affects your business. Again, going back to your money. So understand why capital is read like a map. Understand why gentrification came, why they started selling those houses when they're like, man, we're gonna bleed them out these houses because y'all messing up. You got a lot of value, Black women. Like we have a lot of value in the communities we have, but we don't see the gold. It's for some reason we cannot see the gold. We are not seeing the diamonds of gold right where we're at. Okay. So this is why it's important for circular economics. This is why it's important to turn people in, report them for their crimes. They need to deal with the consequences. It's not someone, oh, he's changing, or oh, I'm going to pray for this person. You keep your belief to yourself, but to serve the community's purpose for Black women and Black girls, you need to report those people. Being silent doesn't help. We also, need to find better ways so that we're protected because that's the other issue. This is why some of the restaurants or salons or whatever you're opening gets affected because we are not reporting the crime. Now, there's other people that come and try to tear you down. There is, but that's why we have to jump on the crime that is in our community so that we can understand who it is and patterns and practices of, oh, we know this has nothing to do with us. We have security camera, we have all that stuff surrounding our business, that we have a good relationship with law enforcement, the judges, or whatever to do this, right? So we have to change the narrative to cash flow. We need cash flow businesses moving forward. Okay, let's go on to the next slide. Now, one thing I did, and I used to do years ago, I got I started to learn how to apply patterns and practices from other communities because you can take away, Black women, a lot of positive stuff from other communities. Again, we cannot have the mindset of keeping it real so much that you're always announcing, well, black people did it first or black people did it. Like, you have to stop that in this modern time. We have that information, that history is there. We got to make sure that history stays documented, right? But in the modern times, you cannot use that as a crutch where we don't see any production. No productivity is coming out of that, right? So, what I said on this presentation, let me dive into a few different types of racial groups of women, and let's just see what they're doing. Because we have to realize other racial groups of women are in America specifically are they have a different system because they don't get as much loans and bank loans and stuff. They don't get all that stuff to which we may believe that's happening. White women may because their counterparts are pretty much still in rule right now, right? But white women still aren't getting this big basket of money for their ideas and the things that they're doing. You know what I'm saying? So we have to look at how are women in different communities holding it up, even if they're immigrants. How does that work where we are seeing businesses rise up, right? Now, not to take away from the last presentation, because of policy, it allowed certain groups to advance or progress almost as fast as African Americans, which is should be crazy because we should be above or right under our white counterparts, our white American people here. But again, if we're not practicing certain things, we don't see the patterns and we're just keeping it real and being silent on stuff, then we're not taking heed to what's going on, right? Instead of hating on other women, saying negative stuff, or letting a subset of a community make you mad, not getting therapy for that anger, that depression, that PTSD, all of that comes together, ladies, and why you're missing the bigger goal here, the bigger vision for us, right? So let's start with Latinas. Let's start with them first, right? In Latin America and U.S. immigrant communities, Latina women use tandas or rotating saving circles. So think about that first before I continue. Rotating saving circles. So I want you to write that down, remember that, when you you can go over this presentation how many times you want, but I need you to think about rotating savings circles, okay? We're talking about when banks or private loan lenders, predatory loans and all that stuff, we're talking about how do we move around them? How do we become better educated and work amongst each other so that we don't have to depend on that, or hey, we don't need a certain type of loan because we understand why it is more harmful to me to get that loan. Now, each woman contributes. One woman collects enough for a clinic, a restaurant, or childcare business. The Inter-American Development Bank reports that 60% of Latino women entrepreneurs in Mexico and Central America cite these informal finance systems as their launch capital. They cluster into food, healthcare, and childcare, steady demand industries, and reinvest profits back into family ventures. It's community capital fueling women's economics. So when we talk about, oh, we'll be fine, and there's some black women that be, oh, we're gonna be fine by ourselves and we gonna make it and God's got us. That's great that you have that mindset, that optimism about us. But are we getting real about the numbers? Are we taking away patterns and practices of other communities and say, you know what, we can do that too? Now, we do have black women who do have that kind of going on, right? But is it a scam? Are we seeing women getting supported with their jobs, right? Right now, acquisitions is back on the map. I knew about acquiring and stuff years ago. There's a lot of stuff I tapped into. So hopefully, I'll continue to try to speak about that stuff as I present, do different presentations for you. But black women, you got to even look at how to buy a business, right? You can go buy childcare businesses, or food businesses or restaurants and healthcare clinics. You can go and buy those things by grouping with like-minded Black women, and again, there should be requirements. We should require that if we're going to work with other Black women, they must have some type of education background. And I'm not saying that's their field. I'm saying, did they finish high school? Right? Are they in a trade? Maybe. Are they going to college? Right? When they're out of college, do they have a business? How long has that business been ran? Kind of assess it as if it's a bank or a financial institution that is looking to provide funding for you. There's certain stuff, certain assets other than just your real estate that you need to have. Black women have to go into their pockets. But when you're working your ass off and all your money is going specifically to your children and it's not going to, let's say, Roth IRA for them, or getting into stocks and investing for them, because that's the difference with us American Black women. We have a different type of economy where we can get into stocks, you can buy businesses, you can do so many different things here in America. So, I don't want you to see it as we're cut off. Please don't see it like that. We just have to figure out what's available to us. Look at the bigger landscape. And again, when you are allowing our counterparts to be the loudest in the room, not really show us any true leadership, not really give out the information, creating this mindset that you have to have them in a home versus, yo, what is going on economically? Why can't we report you? Why can't we take these certain people out? Why haven't you done that? Why are you requiring a transaction and or you're downing education? We have to look at that as we can no longer work with our counterparts in a way that is going to continue to destroy our economics, destroying the minds of the young women and young girls to where they're dealing with so much shit they can't even get themselves on track, or they have to work and do that stuff alongside, right? So when we're looking at the Latina women, we as Black women have to look at rotating savings circles. And we're going to see that a little bit more in a few other groups of women that I'm going to pull up here. But just understand, if some of the main low revenue businesses, and I'm not saying childcare, healthcare, and food doesn't, depending on what you're doing, right? Depending on where the market is, can do well. But you have to look at it as these are the things that Black women need for not only ourselves, for our children, and to sustain our families, especially being a breadwinner of the home, right? Especially single women. These are areas you need to look at. A lot of single women, if they started to discipline themselves, single mothers especially, if you start to discipline yourself, you can see, man, financially, I need to get myself on track. Once I do that, I can probably go buy a cash flow business out there, a childcare center, right? And train, you know, understand training is important. Going to take courses is important. All that is going to pay off in the long run when those are also the requirements. So young girls who may just need a job, and we know what that looks like. We know what poverty looks like when it comes and they just want to work, they just want to provide for their children, or just want to get a leg up. We know what it looks like, Black women, right? But we want to make sure they're disciplining themselves so that they can continue to position themselves for higher and higher jobs and education. So you can dominate this right in your community. You can dominate restaurants. It doesn't have to just be soul food. It doesn't at all. Healthcare, clinics, all that stuff. It doesn't need to just be in certain areas. We need to have it literally around the U.S., right? Childcare. We need to take advantage of better care. If we're saying schools may not teach our kids, or again, we have single mothers who maybe can't afford childcare, we have to see how can we make it affordable in our communities, and what do we do to make that affordable for the women in our communities. We cannot be super dependent upon the government every time to solve our problems. This is why I'm also presenting to you. These women are not dependent upon every government, policy or whatever to better them. They, those policies and stuff for us as American women are important to support, right? To provide the checks and balances that we need so that we don't have, a political party who focuses on everyone that's not American. You see what I'm saying? So let's pick some sectors that we're heavily in or we were heavily in before. But again, ladies, go keep going into law, to medicine, to STEM, because we still need firms, we still need all that stuff. But we're talking about when we're talking, young ladies who are coming in. These are great areas to say, yo, we can dominate these. We can dominate these. We should have been did it. We can, but we have to think of what is another way to do that, right? So again, if you're next to any Latinas or any of them, be friends with them. Ask them economic questions. Ask them these things. Stop asking them about your counterparts. Don't be mad at that. Let's just say, hey, because again, you're already competing with them in the areas that matters to the greater society, right? I spoke about this whole sexual marketplace thing. That's something our counterparts like to focus on. We're not going to do that. We're going to focus on something else. And the guys that are out there, again, I'm not specific to what they have to look like, but I'm just saying the guys out there will support you when they're also on the same page. Okay. And when we look at Latina women, we see the support also comes from their community. When they have restaurants, when you look at unemployment rates, sometimes they don't get affected as much because when they came here, they started to bring some of those customs over here, like the rotating savings. Okay. Now, let's look at Asian communities, right? We have different types of Asians. I personally feel it's ignorant to think all Asians are the same. You have Vietnamese, Cambodians, Taiwanese, Thai people. You have all different types of Asians. Sometimes they practice the same thing. Sometimes they practice something different. But this is to focus on the women and what they're doing so we can pull patterns and practices and apply them to us as Black women. Now, Vietnamese and Chinese women dominate nail and beauty industries through hui, lending circles, and family based labor sharing. A UCLA Labor Center study found that nearly 80% of Vietnamese nail salons in California started with capital pulled from family or hui, and please correct me or I'll correct myself, associations. Within a decade, many co owned wholesalers and distributors, meaning profit doesn't leak out, it circulates. The pipeline is training, license, job, ownership, supply chain. That's not just survival, that's scaling. So understand the success, understand how it works, Black women. Do not look at it as, oh man, they're taking over. It is, how are they working together? How are they able? Because they bring people and they train them. Do we train our young ladies? Are we providing them the training? If the mother, maybe your field is law, for example, are you providing your child some training outside of their basic school? If you're a lady who likes your nails done or you're doing hair and all that, are you training the young ladies so that they can be licensed? Like we do have, beauty schools and cosmetology schools, but those things are important for you, Black women, to run yourself, to be an expert in your craft. And when I mean your craft, meaning every day you spend time on being better and better, better at designs, applying stuff. You research a lot. You may, again, when it comes to the pipeline that Asian women have in this particular industry, supply chain, ownership, job opportunities. When you're looking at that, you can see the disconnect and why we haven't went into these fields and blown up. Sometimes we go into these fields and we're just like, oh, well, they don't, well, that may have been years ago, but you're like, oh, well, they don't help us do X, Y, and Z. However, I recall a Black woman, like when hair was starting to blow up more and more, I recall a Black woman literally took a trip, I believe, to China because Alibaba and stuff was kind of still early in its days. But she took a trip to go to those suppliers. The people here may not be like the people in their country, right? So if people here didn't want to deal with you for some reason, that means we got a policy issue. We got a communication issue. We got a treaty issue. Whatever it is, we got an issue where people are in your community. You're probably, you know, their top consumer. Sometimes you're the consumer that comes into their shops, and it's scaling up their business, but they have not made any partnership deals with you, or provided any training to show maybe a young lady how to do certain designs. They haven't provided you jobs, right? Jobs can't be you just bringing water to people either, right? It has to be you actually working so that you can have the craft of doing nails. Now there's black women who had to go out and teach themselves, because we're very capable. It's not like we can't figure it out, right? I figured out how to become a software engineer or cybersecurity professional because I just focused. I just studied, right? I didn't let certain stuff affect me so much that I didn't see, hey, I know I need to make a high salary because I want to travel, but I don't want to have money worries. I don't want to have kids and I can't take care of them. So that's how I kind of approach my life, you know? But again, when we're talking about reestablishing standards in our communities and around us, Black women, we have to apply this same mentality to our businesses. And you have to be strict on it, right? You have to have that budget going. You have to say, man, this matters, so that even after me, it continues. The beauty industry is probably more than likely not going to go away. And it hasn't really truly expanded to everywhere in the world. But using fashions and all that stuff, that's how you, um, scale up or go to other countries. And that's the goal too. You need to be an American business that can go to other countries and establish other shops, which would train women in those countries. You know what I'm saying? So that's how you got to kind of look at it, right? Now, let's go to the African women. So we have queens, we have chamas, we have the digital hustle that's going on in Africa. Now we have a subset of our community that is solely focusing on this new word, delineating. And I'm not saying new word as if it's just new, but I'm just saying it's the new word of the community. If you think like me, you're just like, man, there's always this new word that people just be rotating and saying and don't even understand, right? But there's this new word, delineating, and or whatever, because African Americans feel that immigrants come, and especially when we're talking about African immigrants, and they're trying to assimilate too much like you, the African American woman. But you got to understand, they want to cut off the heritage. Some of these people want to claim they're native to the land here. And yeah, if you were born here, of course you're native to this land, right? But, our ancestors, if you can trace your family back to the transatlantic slave trade, you have heritage and a lineage that literally comes from that continent. You may not know the specific tribe or the country that your people came from or your people is in, but you have a connection. And I say that because you have other communities here, white, European white, or again, we have our Hispanic or Latin people here from all over the world, and they still honor their cultures, regardless of them being here hundreds of years, just like us, through the generations. They honor that. So why are we allowing a subset of our community cut us off from our heritage because somebody said something, because somebody didn't do something for someone? And usually that's when you're observing, usually that's what you can see. That's what you can see. A few people, let's say 1%, probably less than that, may have a bad interaction with a Vietnamese nail shop or an African woman braiding hair. They may have a bad experience, and now the whole community wants to stop messing with all of them. We want an apology. But how many of us came out and apologize for attacking other people's businesses or any of that. How many of us done that? I have never seen that, coming from our community, apologizing to someone else. And this is what I'm saying. We have to get out of that community, stop listening to a subset, stop aligning with our counterparts when, unfortunately, they don't know how to lead. Unfortunately, they don't, because I'm bringing you stuff that I have not seen yet. I just seen people yap, 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 yap through the years. I'm not new to this. I'm not new to this at all. I'm telling you, I'm very observant, very detailed, to know that, you Black women have a chance as an entrepreneur to go out here and make deals and trades amongst different women. We have the opportunity here. You got to see the opportunities and stuff, right? So in Africa, women have been the economic backbone for centuries. Again, this is not new. Leadership is not new to Black women at all. Politics, military, trade. That's not new to us. So that's why here in America, sometimes I feel a way sometimes that we want to be solely dependent on a man leading us. You know what I'm saying? Like, even today, there's countries that are led by women. We're not new to a woman leading. We should not be new to a woman leading. The issue is we're allowing unhealed women to be the loudest in the room. Unhealed women who don't sound like they have enough information to make better decisions on our approach. Back again, keeping it real. We got too many women who want to keep it real, and not really look at what's going on to say, you know what, this makes a difference, because those kingdoms or queendoms back then were so successful, and they were way older than America, right? So they were successful for so long because they had a system. So even when you go and look at the presentation talking about, the wild animal kingdom, like, those things are natural. Those are spiritual things as well, but natural and spiritual to us. Women, that's why we have to continue to connect with nature and not solely depend on a Bible. This is why I'm not really into certain, religion or any of that stuff, because I think, we figured it out. Our people figured it out way long time ago, but things change. The regime changed, you could say, and that happens. Kenyan chamas, or women's savings groups. So here's that word. Here's those words again. Savings groups pool billions annually, enough to fund land purchases, ladies, businesses, and education. In Ghana, market queens literally govern markets, set prices, and reinvest into schools and housing. Post COVID, many women turn to mobile money and WhatsApp networks to trade across borders. The lesson: women's governance of capital creates resilience, even when formal banks deny us. So, out of these three groupings of women, you see that they aren't solely dependent upon venture capital funding or banks and all that. And again, outside of systemic stuff, we're not applying our own patterns and practices. We're not seeing what is working for other women. And we're here in America, so we have way more better resources and opportunities, better education, all of that stuff here. So that's why you have to take advantage. When they talk about mobile money and WhatsApp, that's a whole new realm, But in America, we want to focus on, comedians and gossip channels. There's a lot of gossip channels for Black women. A lot of them. I do see the Black women out there who got some really good channels, man, and they got some followers and stuff. But man, if they blew up even more, if you supported them way more, some of those gossip channels and all that would, they would be laid down. We don't have to have a YouTube. There's other streaming services, ways that we should have been doing trade now through mobile, trades via mobile, WhatsApp. It's important for every Black woman entrepreneur to have a WhatsApp, in my opinion, because it allows you to scale up, to not look at America as your only market, right? Sometimes your ideas may work in another market. You may need to learn another language. I think it's important that all Black women teach themselves or go learn, and then also your children need to learn one or two new languages, in my opinion, right? Outside of the skills they're trying to get, it's very important for that to happen to expand yourself. And again, you have to get away from the subset of the community that wants to keep it so real that they're putting you on an island. That's literally what's happening. You are on an island right now, and because you want to be so loyal to this island that is not producing any fruit from it, it's messing up your money. It's messing up your ability to say, you know what, in this world, in this modern world, I can go out and do way more. I just need the skills. I just need to put my head down for a few years, and I can come out on top and even help other people in other communities. I think there can be more Black women who are millionaires and billionaires, but again, we're hurting ourselves. We're taxing ourselves. We're hurting ourselves economically if we're not focused on education and taking it serious and not letting people yap in your ear about, because they're insecure, they can't do it, right? They don't have the discipline. You can't allow that to happen. You can't have them forcing children on you. You can't have them, telling you, oh, you need a man and all that. And, you should want a man, right? You should want that. But you need to understand that in the greater society, what really matters is the productivity of each community, whether you're with someone or not. It's just the productivity, right? And then women get together to say, hey, what can we do, right? When you think of Afghanistan, the women over there, they keep taking away rights from those women. They can't do nothing, right? That's the most weirdest situation to me. I'm just gonna say it. It's a weird situation. Um, I get it, but it's like, wow, so this is why here in America, you got to take advantage of what's here. This shouldn't take away from your womanhood. This doesn't make you less of a woman because this is what women do. We've been doing it for a long time because of the regime changes over the years, because of the rulership of a patriarchal system that people want to deny. But hey, because of that, it looks different now, right? But now that you are educated Black women, you can go out in the world, you can work with people, network with people from all backgrounds, and make your way into this world. Your young children, your young girls should be able to look up to you and say, man, my mom, gave me the influence to go out and do what I need to do, right? So we have to look to take things from these women to apply amongst us and really stay focused. If you don't trust each other, there's ways, there's technology now that, there's ways to trust each other. There's ways to see where the money's going now. Just because the government is not using it don't mean that we don't do it. Doesn't mean we can't get lawyers of our own to help us with trust funds or whatever we need to set up. We need to support those women, right? We can't be so scarce with our money that we're paying robbing Peter to pay Paul when we're not working with each other, right? And again, this has to be like-minded Black women. This just can't be Black women looking to bring her man in. We can't be working with those type of women. I'm just keeping it real. We can't have that mindset infiltrating the Black women-led economy within our community. Okay, they had their chance. We got to move forward. I'm just keeping it real. All right. Now, the common denominator, whether it's tandas in Mexico, hui in Vietnam, or chamas in Kenya, the pattern is the same, ladies. Women don't wait on banks. We wait on funding from these institutions here in America, even though they should be helping us more because we're American. But are we doing something that we're not seeking out the right help, right? They pool money, invest in steady sectors, and control their supply chains. Let me read that one more time. They pool money, invest in steady sectors, and control their supply chains. Now, again, this is on the scale of those women in those communities. We're American women. We have way better resources and opportunities, and we should be blowing this out of the water. And no bullshit, ladies. We should be blowing this shit out the water if we just focused, and stayed disciplined. The Federal Reserve reported in 2021 that Black women entrepreneurs are twice as likely to be denied loans as white women. So again, I'm not saying white women don't experience it, they do, but when we're looking at communities and counterparts, that's why I mentioned counterparts. When we look at that, it's a different type of setup. This is why you have to let your counterparts compete with other counterparts that are in their sex or gender group, right? You've got to let them compete because we've been competing. We've been doing what we're supposed to do: jobs, education, trying to get some economics going, trying to get capital, right? So it's not like we haven't been making those attempts and trying to do it. There may be doors closed on us and all that, but we have to understand it happens to other women of other communities as well. So what did they do? They found a way around that door. They said, hey, we got jobs. That's why you have jobs, Black women. That's why you should be focused on your skills, right? When you're buying businesses or you're investing or you're opening up your own child care center or health care clinic, any of that stuff is very important so that it can sustain us over time, right? And with that, you don't have to worry so much about banks and stuff. But what you do with that type of stuff, you hit up your politicians. This is why voting and local political power matters. We lost that local political power. So we have to gain that back, like tough. Okay. We have to gain that political power back tough. I feel like in each 50 states, we need areas where we're gaining it really tough, right? And when we do that, we can say, well, yeah, we may not have a shark tank. We have our own shark tanks. We have our own, I don't want to say it's a stock market, but we can literally run one that's in tandem, to the stock market where, a Black woman's business can get funded by putting on events. And we have our own Black women investors. And who are those Black women that are investing? Black women who were disciplined, have careers, and all that stuff. So that's how we're starting to help each other. That's what I'm saying. We have more of an opportunity if we take those patterns and practices from other women to apply to our community. Now, without our own trust-based circles, we're stuck begging banks to consistently say no. Again, we cannot look at this as, a racial thing and just, okay, that's it. I can't get the funding. I can't do that. Again, we understand that we should be getting it, right? Because we don't own a lot of banks. We don't have a lot of even our counterparts owning banks like that, right? And even then, when we're talking about banking, that is changing. So this is why you also got to stay up with what's going on with the economy, different ways people are using apps and stuff to send money, a money service business. Those are important. Black women need to get into money service business. That's why getting into finance, getting your young children already started on financial intelligence, and getting your daughters to get into the finance field as well. This is very important. Even if they don't go work on Wall Street, it's not about that. It's about getting the education and the skill so we can go out and do our thing, right? It supports our community. Collective capital is the denominator of women's success worldwide. So that's the common denominator that we have, Black women, and why we need to start practicing these savings groups, practicing investing in each other, so that these things can happen. Now, again, this is not for every Black woman. I'm not even speaking to all Black women. This is for a particular type of mindset that we have in our communities, and why, if we, practice these things, we can fare better here. Okay. Now, let's take a look at why our loops broke, because again, like I said, these things aren't new to us, right? But we're not practicing them as much, or we're not amongst women to know it's a practice. Maybe the secret groups we have or investment clubs that are going on, because that's going on regardless of people want to say. That is definitely going on among Black women. But we have to understand and be real with ourselves on why we're not applying these same patterns and practices here in America. Historically, Black women had systems to burial societies, mutual aid funds, co ops. But urban renewal destroyed business districts, redlining scattered networks, and predatory scams damaged trust in SUSU systems. By the 2008 housing crash, black wealth had dropped 53% in just 4 years, Pew Research found. Now, I mentioned that in my last presentation so you can see what did Republicans or Democrats do and what happened. And I started from 2008 for a reason, right? Now, that erased the cushion needed to see the next generation of businesses. So between that time and now, a lot has been lost economically, Black women, and then COVID hit, right? You got crime in your community rising because we're gonna keep it really real, right? Our loops broke not from lack of skill, because we have a lot of intelligent Black women, a lot of us, and we have even more if we heal ourselves and understand the landscape here, but from systemic sabotage. And now we must rebuild them with governance and transparency. So, again, this is why I'm saying policies matter. You know, voting matters. Being politically educated matters. You cannot just be voting because someone wants to be emotional. When people come into your community and they're focused and they're talking to the pastors only, when people come in your community and they let certain people, speak up, there should be no celebrity speaking. There should be no entertainers of any kind speaking. I don't care if they're philanthropists or whatever. Do not let them be the leaders speaking because they don't live in the communities you're in. So they wouldn't know too much unless they may have visited or whatever. But once you start doing your thing and making money, you really start thinking different anyway, Black women. You're going to start thinking different. It's not going to be anything against you because you left some people behind. Those people they gave up on themselves. You can't be up, oh, I ain't going to give up on them. Like, no, you need to give up on them. You need to give up on them and put your energy into the ones who really want to do it. Putting your energy into the younger girls would fare out better than just saying, "Oh, I ain't gonna leave them behind," or I'm not gonna give up," or I like, man, you need to go and talk to someone so you can get out your mind that it's affecting your money, it's affecting the progress around you. If you want to really lay back and be chill, it's going to be up to us, Black women. I feel it's up to us. I feel that in my soul. I feel that as a part of my purpose, you know. And I could have started this a long time ago, trust me, but I've been building up for the years. I've been preparing for years to start to finally speak out about some stuff, right? So we got to understand, and I'm speaking to the millennial generation because 2008 ish, we were still coming out of college. There's still some college students. Because I know I was, coming out of college still. I didn't finish college, but I went to obtain certifications in the IT information technology field as a trade or another skilled um, area because I was already a person who could understand the outlook. People just got on stocks to me. It's crazy because I see people on stuff. I'm like, man, I was on that stuff long ago, but I was broke back then. I was broke, but I read a lot. I got into a lot of information so that when the time came to when I got that money, when it fared out for me better, I knew I was ready to go, right? But I take that era because that affected our parents, and our parents really didn't get to recover, right? They didn't set up anything for them. Then when we got older, because again during that time you had Bush and John Kerry. You had this is right before 9/11. No, this was still going on the war. Excuse me, the war was still going, the Iraq War. or you had, the Obama era starting. So you had a lot of changes that was going on, and again, we were still kind of young as far as like college, based students. Some didn't go to college, so we had a lot of that, So that's what I'm saying now that we're hitting our late uh, 30s to early 40s. This is something, and I think some of us are in their mid 40s too, but just saying now we have to look at the landscape a little bit different. We gotta change what happened in the past, right? We gotta make that shift. We gotta have a better strategy moving forward. Meaning we don't support any political candidate that wants to promote immigration as the number one issue in the U.S. in our country. We can't do that, right? Because that got in our way. That just really got in our way, right? We cannot continue to do anything like that. We can't support policies that doesn't support women and our health. We just can't support any candidates like that. We can't be supporting people in the name of Jesus. Okay, you just can't. I don't care how you feel about it. It's just the truth. You need to go sit in what I'm saying and understand this is real. You're not, So we have to understand why our loops broke for ourselves. When you're looking at a Madam C.J. Walker or the women of that time when they pretty much kind of started the beauty industry here in America. If you really go back, if you really observe, that's what was happening. Those black women were probably the early women who started the beauty industry here, amongst other, white women if they were involved at that time, right? So that's what was happening. So we can't never lose that. We just have to figure out what happened, what took us off the track, and get back on that track and move forward. Okay. Now, what actually funds your first store? So again, um, I'm going to explain different ways to look at this, right? And this is for the entrepreneur-minded women, and then women who may not become entrepreneurs. This is how you can understand who you're going to support on their entrepreneur endeavors. So let's talk practical. The first store needs deposits, equipment, inventory, and payroll. The second stage is marketing and management, so the owner can step back to scale. Meaning, black women, you do not need to be working your business an employee. Why? You're going to get burnt out. We can look at some of our grandmas and all. They burnt out. They are tired. Okay, this is why it's important to get your education, get into a trade or a high skilled job, so that when you're in these corporate environments, you can see how an HR department is ran, right? And hiring. Get to try to talk to your executives, understand your executive teams, understand the stocks that are in your company, right? Understand how the money works in your company, how you be getting paid from the profits in the company, right? Understand the benefits of that company, that the healthcare benefits that people get, the PTO. Understand who comes and cleans up, the security if it's a certain building that you got to check into. Understand the accounting team or department, the marketing department. This is why big companies, your Fortune 500 companies, your billion-dollar companies are so successful. You can look at Jeff Bezos, for example. He started out in his home just selling books, right? But if you're looking at it as just a hustle to make some extra dollars here and there, you're going to burn yourself out. You're going to be looking for the next thing when you should have just stayed in your lane, this lane that you were in, so you can scale it up. If you're going to be a lawyer, stay in that lane, stick to it, stick to the plan. If you're going to go into the medicine field, healthcare, daycares, stick to the plan, because your daughter may, be a judge or something. Your daughter may become a scientist, here, or your daughter may be the head of some type of manufacturing company for some food or something like that. So that's why you want to stick to it, so that over time it can scale, and then you can hire. So those black women in the federal government who lost their jobs, that would have been nothing to them, right? It'd have been like, oh well, my people got jobs, and so I'm going to take the information. I'm going to take what I learned, and I'm going to just go get hired at the job because there's some openings, and we're going to hire them, and they're going to bring that expertise from what they've learned, right? That's how you really got to look at it. Now, in immigrant circles, ROSCAs, which are the savings that I was mentioning from the Latinas, the Asian community, and when you're talking about the African women community, you're just looking at those. So that can fund your phases, right? So we have like-minded Black women who sees this at a bigger scale. Now, for us, it often means high interest credit cards or predatory loans. So this is how we can get rid of depending or seeking out those things first. If we get with like-minded Black women who can invest and see the return on their investment, right? So that's really how it has to happen. Okay. Now it's not a new will. Like this is why, you also study businesses when you're getting into stocks and stuff. You need to understand that company, right? The management of that company. You have that ability when you're investing into certain companies. You become a part of their board, even you vote on certain stuff. So it's very important to take those things seriously. Now, that's why SBA data shows Black women are the most likely group to self fund businesses. But you're self funding it out of your own pocket. So now you don't even have enough net worth. You don't have no net worth. You're working your butt off, which and that should be commended. That you're working your butt off to fund your own business because you can't get along, right? And the least likely to receive external capital. So less than 1% of venture capital. You can have the best ideas that are out there, right? But they have to be high revenue, meaning you need to understand how to make the money, how to scale the money from city to city, state to state, if that's what your business can do. Franchising. You just can't be like, oh, I'm having a business and we run it. That's why some of our businesses are failing or fail because we are refusing to look at it that way. Some businesses, they can't wait to get some money to buy them a new car, right? They can't wait. This is why when you see people talk about wealth, some wealthy people hide in plain sight. It's better for you as a Black woman to hide your wealth in plain sight than to say, I need to go out and get this Mercedes because I need to show everybody I got a business. That's what I'm saying. The mindset of us like minded Black women has to totally change from the subset of keeping it real. Okay. Now, without circles, debt bleeds our profits before we even grow. So, not trusting each other. Again, you're not just trusting some random woman that's looking to scam. You checking those credentials. Does she have some finance background? Does she, have a certification or a degree or something that you can hold her to the fire and report on it? You know what I'm saying? That's very important. We have to establish that. Again, there's software out there now, there's technology that would help, the trust factor when you want to see where your money's going and how it's moving. That's already out here. And you have Black women like myself who build these type of things, who know how to build these type of things because we had to do it for the companies we work for, right? So without the circles, meaning Black women, we've lost trust amongst each other. We've lost trust. We allowed scammers. We allowed women who wanted to take care of their man, be the main focus. We allowed women to mess the money up because they just wanted to take trips. We have women who got restaurants who never invested back into them, so they cheers and their tables look all crappy. You can barely give your employees a good salary. Your employees after some time should be getting increases. You not increasing the wages of your employees is a failure in your business. I'm sorry, it's a failure, right? You not focusing on better training and customer service is a failure, right? You shouldn't have the mindset where you're going out expecting everyone to provide you customer service, but you're not putting that into your business. It is highly important to have the best customer service and employees that promote that employees who work their ass off, who work hard. Like, this is why it's important for you to understand these facets of a business so that you can scale and you can finally step back as the CEO and say, okay, I'm going to go establish whatever your business is. I'm going to go and establish it in another country now. And I'm going to help bring some people over there to help train them, right? These things are very important. Everything you're doing in your career field, ladies, it's so important to apply to your own business, right? But we want to, and I'm just saying this, what I see, I feel like some of us just want to have hustles. That's what I feel. I feel like we're not focused on the craft. We're not focused on the education, continued education for ourselves. We're ready to pop off. We're ready to be upset about something. We're ready to throw some money at somebody, right? When you were the disciplined one. And you got to, I'm sorry, we got to have a period of time where we're cutting it off. And if it's not about this particular collective that are working towards these particular things for Black women and young girls, then you got to cut it off, man. You got to cut it off. You can't just be giving away money and there's no business plans. There's no, you didn't check no finances, nobody. That's just should be out of the question, right? You got to be like, my money has to be making money. I got to see cash flow. I got to know that business work. Won't you go out and make some profits and then you can come back to me? You got to think just like people in other communities. And what I'm saying is, if we apply those same practices as the women that I just spoke about, being American women, we should be blowing this out the water. Like, it should be, man, it should be on some massive scale, some crazy stuff, right? It really should. It really, really should if we stay disciplined for a few decades, okay? All right, so let's look at when Black women open, they're targeted. So let's go back to crime. Let's go back to our storefronts. You know, um, when we look at storefronts and crime in our community, keeping it real, being in denial, keeping silent affects your money. Your business is being vandalized, right? Documented incidents prove it. In 2023, a Black woman owned restaurant in Houston was vandalized days after opening. And this is not her. I know of different Black women. You know, again, I don't care about what's going on with other communities. We're focusing on us. We're focusing on what's affecting us and how do we even get here, right? And then how we're going to heal and do better. So, rising vandalism and theft in beauty shops, restaurants, and salons disproportionately owned by Black women. So you have to also see it. You're making the efforts and attempts to better your community, but there's people amongst us internally that you want to keep silent about, that you don't want to report because you feel, the white man, whatever they're going to do, when we should be having people in our community going into those fields anyway. And then that would balance it, right? It should balance it, right? But you have all of these issues going on with your business. You taking the most hits and you still praying and you still like, girl, snap into reality, snap out of it. Okay. Each incident costs thousands of dollars. So every time your window's busted, every time they come in and take your products that you worked hard, you disciplined yourself, you had to come out of your own pocket to get to where you at. Okay. You had to come out your own pocket, and people in your community. Now, are there people who are not in your community that come in and attack you? Hell yeah, they do. But how are you even knowing if that's happening, right? How do you even know? What security do you have? These things are very important when you're even opening up a brick and mortar. You can't just have the, oh, I'm going to open it up, blah, blah, blah. It's important to go, again, you don't have to go to business school. It helps because you think totally different. But you can work with a Black woman who has her MBA, right? Who understands that. You can work with security companies that understand the cameras you're going to need, so you can have the evidence, the insurance you're going to need. All these things need to be in place to protect your investment. And when you're failing to do that, when you're failing to protect your money because you don't care or God's got it or whatever, man, we've been in this country for a long time. Let's stop speaking like that. Keep that to yourself and let's keep it real, right? It's costing you money, thousands of dollars. But more than money, it sends a chilling signal to the next entrepreneur. Your dream may not be safe. So now you got other black women maybe like, man, I don't even want to open my business. So now it's people that don't want to do it. You can't just tell them, oh, well, just open it anyway. Why? Ain't nobody protecting nothing. Nobody's loyal to me. Nobody's loyal to me trying to bring jobs because the CVS or the Rite Aid left. Nobody's protecting the new pharmacy here that's ran by black people. Nobody's doing that, right? This is where collective funds and community trade deals become survival tools. So the funds can pay for better security, supporting voting for the correct sheriff who's going to be no nonsense on crime. You worried about a criminal who you know in your heart is a criminal, you protecting that person is affecting other black women's businesses in your community. If you don't care, then you need to stay with that subset of the community. And the other black women, please get out of there and go to other areas in the country and reestablish yourselves. I'm really telling you that you need to get out of there because it's going to continue to happen. If those stores left, you need to go to other communities. They may be open to your business, and if not, again, there's towns, there's areas in the U.S. that I think black women have not even thought about to reestablish a community for themselves. Like places in mountain areas, you need to stop being scared, stop being afraid of racism and all this other stuff. And because we've been here for so long, so we should know this like the back of our hands. This is our backyard. America is our backyard, ladies. Your hometown or wherever you're at is your backyard. So you just need to reestablish yourselves in different areas where it's away from that subset and let that subset deal with whatever's about to happen. Because obviously they gave up. They gave up so much. They said they wanted to tear down your progress. They wanted to continue to hurt you because of whatever issues they're dealing with. But we can't be silent about that no more. We can't move forward like that. We can't support politicians or anyone who is not for us and the community we are serving. They cannot keep getting your votes through church, any of that stuff. Like they just can't play with your emotions like that. You got to be real, black women. You not being real and letting them play with your emotions is why your money still has not scaled up. Because I just showed you through other communities, patterns, and practices that creating collective saving groups would help. So I'm showing you how to get around that type of stuff. So now there's no reason why we can't move forward, right? There's really no reason. So standing together, just like the elephants did, just like other coalitions, whether they're wild animals or women of other communities, just like they do, establish these things and we keep moving up. I'm telling you to focus on this because this is not new to us. People tearing down your leadership quality, trying to screw you over as your image. We just got to get away from them. We got to do. And this will be the perfect way to try to start moving in silence and doing our thing. Okay? Now, here's the reality. When luxury stores and wealthy corridors are hit, police respond with task forces and media attention. When smaller shops on struggling black corridors face repeat incidents, they're left to fend for themselves. A 2022 National Retail Federation survey found 53% of small retailers in high crime areas reduced hours or closed entirely within a year of repeated thefts. It's not just crime, black women, it's unequal response. and Black women's businesses are most likely to be abandoned. Now, again, we know the landscape. We're not new to a systemic issue, a racial systemic issue, because those law enforcement, those politicians, those mayors, those tax I forgot the name. It's not a tax collector, but they do focus on the income of the city. Your judges, all of these people matter when you're voting to put them in their positions, because by profession they should be unbiased. It shouldn't be about a color thing or the response is different. It really shouldn't. But you know why that's happening? Because these people in those communities are trying to vote in a way that is going to serve them in the long run. So allowing their votes to become the political power, it affects you as a Black woman. And what are you doing? You're just going to lay down and let that continue to happen. You just lay down and let it happen, right? No. So this is why it's important when you're voting that people in certain positions, are going to work with you and make sure that you're holding them to the fire. Don't just be voting because Jesus told you to. Like, how is that helping everyone else? How is that helping a young girl or any of those people? Don't vote because your pastor told you to, because your counterpart told you to. You're voting because this is going to continue to help Black women. Why? Like other communities of women. However, again, we are American women. We really can blow this out of the water with supporting each other in a different way when we're talking about economic advancement for ourselves and our young girls. So, when our communities are affecting us internally, when it's us, we have to look at that as an issue. Why are our businesses being attacked? And if it is by people we know, we need to make sure they're being reported. We need them removed because they're affecting the economics. Those particular people are telling me they want to live in poverty. They love what they're dealing with. They have given up already. That's what that tells me. I'm not about to wait on that. If it's a young person, that's different. Someone really young. But outside of that, I'm not about to be waiting on none of those people because just like you, they needed to figure out how to be disciplined. People can make better choices for themselves, but they refuse to make better choices. And it is affecting your money. It's affecting the economics of the community, of you moving, scaling up, positioning yourself, right? So it's very important on even why this is happening, even outside the systemic issues and policies that we have. This is happening. And then what happens? The real estate goes down, the cost of the real estate goes down, jobs are lost, and then you have that gentrification coming in, or you have the immigrants moving in and rebuilding all around your ass because they knew your people act like they couldn't, do the right thing and support you so that you have a long standing business. Your business should be lasting for over 100 years, whether you're here or not. That's how you got to see this, Black women. You got to see this like, and this is for you Bible thumpers, seeing something, having this faith that one day is to happen. Even though some of those characters in the Bible passed away, the message behind that is that they had the faith to see it one day, or it was going to happen one day. Let's take reality. Walt Disney, for example, he didn't see the Disneylands and the Disney worlds of today, but his idea, his thought process of what he wanted it to be, right? And he had other people carrying it on. That's why your legacies, your young daughters, are important. Your nieces, your granddaughters, it's important, right? It's very important so that they continue that legacy for you. And you don't have any more money issues. You don't have any more dependency issues going on. Okay. Now, let's look at the beauty money map because in our community, we cannot deny we love beauty, the beauty products. And this is any woman. That's why I'm like, when you're looking at different women around the world, we're all into that type of stuff, right? So it's nothing different. Who cares what guys say? This is just what it is. This is an industry women can really, well, we have, dominated, but more black women need to get in the industry to dominate, right? Supply chains, for example, all that stuff that we read with, for example, the Vietnamese women, same thing, same practices and patterns can happen if you want to dominate that industry. We've seen what is done for Rihanna and how she even used social media to even get to the billions. We've seen other women of other communities who also use the beauty industry to come up. Beyonce tapped in, all these women tapped in, and we are not still taking advantage of the hair and all that. I know we have hair shows and all that, but it needs to, we need to really focus in on the business side so that we can dominate it. And again, it creates a long-standing industry for hundreds of years. Madam C.J. Walker probably would have never imagined the industry to be what it is today. You understand? She could have never seen what it is today. Okay. So black women spend an estimated $8 billion annually on hair care alone, according to Nielsen. You know, now let me just pause there because we have counterparts who are not mathematically literate, not economically sound, who want to use that information to tell you that, oh, you're spending too much, oh, you guys putting more money into hair and blah blah blah. Okay, we're trillions of dollars. The wealth gap is trillions of dollars from white people or Asian people. Okay, and then we have the Hispanic community that's made up predominantly of immigrants. Okay, let's be for real. And we're talking about trillions of dollars, not spending power, black women. Let's get away from that mindset. We are not just consumers. We don't work just to consume. We work to enjoy the options and investments of other women or other people, right? That's what we do, right? So our counterparts would use that as saying, well, that's where the money is going. But again, look at my previous videos and what I'm laying out to you here. I'm pointing to you exactly what the problems appear to be and what we're not doing as black women. So I would say this is us being consumers because we're spending it. Here's the 8 billion of that quote unquote $1 trillion spending that we keep promoting because we're economically illiterate. We are, and I'll include myself. We are economically illiterate that we're priding ourselves off of trillions of dollars, and we have 8 billion we're putting into the industry. Now, how are we taking that 8 billion and circulating it? And is that 8 billion that's going back to other black women, right? That's how we gotta look at that 8 billion that's being spent, right? Yet the majority of distributors, I don't know why I tied tongue on that one, and storefronts are owned by Asian families, not us. So again, some of these Asian families are immigrants. Okay. So the issue is, it's not that we can't get in, it's how do we get in? They want to come and dominate it. It goes back to the policies. Why are Democrats, why has Democrats been supporting immigrants more than black women when black women could have worked to establish these things in our community, right? Again, black women, these are things we gotta look at. We gotta look at the playing field here. Now, this is economic leakage. Without owning the supply chain, every dollar we spend enriches someone else's corridor. So when we see those black hair stores, beauty salons, we have to support them, but they also have to understand they need to scale themselves. They need to provide training. They need to make sure that workers can earn a good living. There's more departments they can start establishing, bringing in black women from different levels of, let's say HR or again finance, legal. You have all those things that can be applied to that business to scale it up now, right? That's how we really got to see it. The solution isn't boycott. So and that's just me, we got to stop looking at everything as, oh, we got to boycott. We are still using the strategies from the civil rights era. I'm still hearing boycott. Even though it works, I'm not saying that it's a broken will, right? But black women have to have better strategies, and that's what I'm saying. We're being economically illiterate in how we're handling what's going on in our community, as black women, right? The solution isn't boycotting, it's trade leverage. We have to understand trade, international trade, intranational trade, right? Making deals, negotiating, deal making, negotiating are so important. You need to go and get books. Now, some of us may not like everything Trump's doing, but understand when he talks about deals and deal structures and all that stuff, you need to understand that mentality. That's the mentality with what in which got their community being who they are, advancing, doing all that stuff, getting all that money. That's really what's happening. But if we're failing to allow that to happen because, we're so silent, we don't report people, our businesses are being attacked, that means you don't got time as a business owner to even focus on, man, how can I be better in trade? How can I get train black women or young girls over here to maybe manufacture my products or whatever and trade them, or look at Africa, they may have a mineral or something over there, that can be used, a natural ingredient that we can trade with them. That's how you got to understand this, black women. Okay, purchasing co-ops, wholesale negotiations, and regional distributors under black women's control flips the script. I'm going to say that again. Regional distributors under black women's control flips the script, making our consumption fund our growth. Again, this is specifically for black women who are like-minded, and to also help our young black women. So I'm not here to promote the relationship stuff. I'm just telling you from the things I've observed over the decades, or a decade or two. This is what's happening. We are trying to tell people to be leaders that have not really revealed any of this stuff. So I'm just telling you, I'm not banking on people to continue to let me suffer, right? And I'm telling you, with your votes, we're adding more suffering to ourselves because we're voting with our emotions, black women, okay, and not with strategy, not with thought in mind of who the hell we're voting for, and are they going to be supporting immigrants and giving them stuff, and not worried about your maternal health care or the economics of your community, the crime that's going on in your community, right? So we have to stop this leak in the beauty industry if that's what you want to stop. And this is just an area, again, childcare, healthcare. These are areas that we have to stop those money leaks when we're spending. Okay. Now, trade, not charity. Okay. So here we are. If Vietnamese nail chains or Korean beauty distributors earn the majority of their revenue from black corridors, meaning you are the main consumers out of all other women, reciprocity is non negotiable. It's non negotiable. Trade agreements, MOUs, can require local hiring, apprenticeships, shared security costs, and a tithe into a black woman's storefront fund. This isn't anti immigrant, it's pro equity. The corridor is a market, not a mine. If you draw from our well, you contribute to deepening it. Now, why this is important? Because there's not a lot of checks and balances that are actually occurring. The Democrats, unfortunately, and I'll say Republicans too, but I'll just say the Democrats because these were their coming from their administration when we're talking about immigration policies. When they're writing these policies, if you're not in those written in those policies to have it support you, then this is why also your businesses are failing, right? So when we're talking about when we look at white people and their corporations or businesses, they're the number one job suppliers in this country. They're the number one suppliers. Now, when other communities come here, as far as immigrants, when they come here and they're building their corporations or establishing them, you got white people who benefit off of that, right? But we're not benefiting off of it because there's no audits going on. I'm telling you, there's none of that happening, right? You don't have no food audit. That means these people are just probably running their businesses, not getting nobody coming to check. Who cares if they got an attitude? This is America. We do things different. We got labor laws. We got ways to handle food. When you got food trucks all out there and they're not being checked, but they're just getting the opportunity to just start up here. And I mean, start up and they ain't got a business license. They don't have none of that. That's an issue, right? When they aren't hiring your people, right? You can't make white people be the only type of people that have to give you jobs, and you're not holding anybody else to the fire. You're not holding the Asian community to the fire. You're not holding the Hispanic community to the fire, or the African immigrants that come here, or Caribbeans that come here and start businesses. You're not holding any of them to the fire. There's black women I know, you hire these people. You hire these people when they come, even when you have nothing. You hire these people because you think you're going to get a reward from heaven, right? They don't think of that. They think of, I'm coming here, I want a job, I want to take advantage, send some money back to my people maybe, and I'm going to take advantage, and then I'm going to find ways to get my people in here. And if you were observing, like some of us were, black women, you would see that's what was happening, right? Now your jobs are being more and more scarce. Now your unemployment is rising like crazy because you allow these people to come in and just, I don't want to say run amok, but pretty much where you didn't hold your politicians to the fire. You didn't say, yo, we need to make sure every quarter or every year these people are audited. You need to hold them to the fire just as the white businesses that corporations that's hiring us. You need to make sure that same stuff is happening around you, because when it doesn't, you lose. It affects your money. It affects your progress, right? And now your community is pretty much obsolete. And again, these people stopped worrying about you. Let's go back to 2008. It's further than that. Don't get me wrong, but I'm saying, like, I'm just taking that era when we're talking about the modern day, because I don't have to go back to slavery to talk about something today, right? We can go back just a few decades and just look at the changes and policies and stuff to say this is why we are at where we're at. This is what affected us. Democrats fucked up here. Republicans, you fucked up there, and this is what we need you to do to earn our vote, right? But you have to do that moving forward. So with this whole deportation thing, in my opinion, again, nothing against immigrants that are coming here legally and doing what they're supposed to do, but you should be in support of the deportation issue that's going on right now. You should be in support, because I just laid out to you in a few presentations here of what some of the issues are. And if you're blind, or you're saying, I'm going to let my emotions, take over, what's literally in my face, then I'm jacked up. I'm never going to progress. I'm never going to get the funding or the things I need to stay afloat or progress better. So when we hear some of the subset of our community talking about black and brown pride and all this other crap, I'm telling you, they're not focused on the economics. They're not at all. They're focused on the women, and that's why these presentations are here, because if that's how the counterparts want to move, we have to move differently as like-minded black women, right? We got to move in a different direction where we are assimilating with our overall American culture here, right? Meaning we have to back up the policies that are actually supporting us. Because again, looking from 2008 to now, if one party is saying, yo, we tried to stop that, you call us racist. Now, was there some racist issues? Yeah, but again, if you're observing and just observing from an unbiased lens, one party was trying to play on your emotions and the other party was like, yo, you're trying to mess up um, the American way of life. You're bringing in the whole world into our American way of life. Again, we're not the only country, and it's not even just European countries that are doing this. There's countries that do not want this flood of immigrants coming there because, unfortunately, some of them bring their customs or what they do, and it trashes up your areas. It messes up everything. And again, California alone wanted to give people health care and shit. They wanted to, and again, I don't want to be totally against it, but it's like, dude, you're not focused on the high mortality rates of black women and their babies. You're not focused on the health that's still affecting black women, diabetes, all these things. Now, again, internally, we should have been focused on these things. We should have nutritionists. That's why we need doctors and in those areas, healthcare professionals in those areas, because we can't depend on white people all the time in their professions. This is the issue. This is why we were doing well in certain periods of America, like Gilead age. Even though it did some economic, it brought economic issues, but this is why it was like a quest for a certain profession during certain times where it benefited your community. That's why I'm saying certain trades and avenues of entrepreneurship would be the best course of action moving forward, right? And you can get this information from people from other communities. Don't rely on your community alone. That's why I brought up the patterns and practices you can take away um, to focus on that. So again, we are not giving away charity no more. We are not going to black and brown it. We're not going to do any of that as black women. Let the subset do with that because they're not focused on real economics. They're not challenging these immigrants or people who come here and establish these businesses in or around your community. They're not coming here. You're prideful about being a consumer and you're putting it right into their businesses and not into yours, and wonder why your money is not increasing. Your net worth is still at $5 because you can't even save money. You can't even invest it correctly, right? This is why. The mentality has to change. The policies have to change. The political candidates, they have to change. We cannot allow Democrats or Republicans to move forward if they aren't America first. There's absolutely nothing racist about it. I don't care if they want to bring up xenophobia. That's what I'm saying. Like certain things are trying to tug at your emotional strings, especially as a woman. As a woman, excuse me, especially as a woman, they want to tug at your emotional strings. But when you're educated, you cannot demean or belittle what you know, what you went to be disciplined in. You cannot let your mind put you back in a place that you came out of. Renew your mind. You're renewing your mind all the time. Okay. So no more charity from nail salon, any of that. We need to do agreements, trade agreements. This is why that's important so that our young black girls are getting into these fields, are able to know supply chain, be it people who can help license people, open up more schools or businesses internationally, intranationally, right? So this is very important for us as black women. Okay. Now, refounding the circle, the Susu 2.0. Rebuilding trust means governance. A modern Susu can have bylaws, digital signature accounts, rotating treasuries, quarterly audits, and arbitration rules. Ghanaian and Caribbean women have perfected, these systems abroad. We can modernize them here with digital escrow and legal protections. The goal? To make the circle more trustworthy than the bank. Because if black women can't depend on external institutions, we must depend on each other with receipts. We must trade with these women of other communities as well. Because if we're doing good as Americans, they're going to do good. It just has to happen. We have to look at this as a black women led economy moving forward. And we're just assimilating with the greater economy of America. Okay. Our first enclaves, beauty and care. Again, I'm into other stuff. I'm going to probably be more of the STEM ferns and stuff like that. But these are some things that we see in our communities, that we can have enclaves. Okay. We start where the demand is undeniable: beauty and care. Cosmetology schools, nail training, esthetician licenses, and childcare centers are industries Black women already dominate as consumers. By clustering shops, co-locating childcare with salons, and pooling purchasing, we create economies of scale. Clustering pretty much means that there can be multiple beauty shops or care enclaves in a community, or a few blocks. Go and look at I don't know if any of you eat pho, or like Vietnamese pho, Chinese restaurants, Mexican restaurants. When you look at that, you see how close they are to each other, even though some of them may serve the same thing. But their general compound chicken may be different from the general compound chicken from the next place. So clustering pretty much means you can have multiple shops in an area. It doesn't have to be oversaturated, but it's just look at how they're doing that, and you can practice the same thing. Okay. This is exactly what Latina and Asian women have done. The model exists. Our version just needs ownership and replication. So we already have it. We need to stop being consumers, as our main, reasoning, meaning you're going out working, you don't have the money, you don't budget, you don't take financial literacy, very important, to where we're priding ourselves, or we're hearing women in our community pride themselves off being consumers. That is not the tea, sis. That ain't it, sis. That ain't it. Consumers are is one thing, but having the money, to the trillions to invest to have more cash flow, would be the goal, right? Childcare is important, especially for those single women who need to go out and pursue their education or their business or whatever. It's important. So we need to come back to these things and create some dominance in our communities, take these things over. And again, do agreements with these women. We're not saying we're kicking them totally out, because they live amongst us too. But we need to ensure that we're benefiting, so that that trillion is going to be zero one day. It will, if we do not take heed to what's happening here. Okay. Now, the risk, corridor risk, and support index. Think of this as a financial x-ray of a block. Okay. We measure incidents within 150 meters, vacancy rates, business churn, and whether federal capital has flowed into the corridor. A green rating means expand now. Yellow means cluster and negotiate security. Okay. Red means relocate 2 blocks over, not out of the industry. The Urban Institute calls these micro geographies of risk. We call them survival maps. If you don't measure the corridor, you're flying blind. So again, we should know our communities, Black women, like the back of our hand. It's our backyard. We should know this enough, but we have to move intelligent enough. We have to gain that intelligence again. Um, you know, Again, we're not new to this. This is not new to us. Our heritage, our lineage is not new, but we have to bring this to a modern time, so that we understand risk. And if we understand what's in red, this is where we're like, yo, we voted for the sheriff or these people over here. These are the areas y'all need to clean up, and then maybe we can make these green again, or maybe we can make that green again. So the goal is to keep, get to green. When you're working in your job, depending on what your field is, you have reports, you have people who come back to look at the progress, right? Project managers out there, y'all already know about this type of stuff, where you're trying to reach, what's the end goal, right? So that's what we have to look at. So factors are things we have to see in our communities, to say, yo, this is what's affecting Black women's businesses, and this is how we're going to move forward when we're looking at different blocks to establish these businesses on. Okay. And that makes us not to be all over the place. But again, I feel in every state, all 50 states, Black women need to have these coalitions going on, these communities going on in every state. Don't think you need to be in the South. Don't. We just need to bring people to different areas, spread ourselves out so we are in every state, and each state we can make political action, political strategy, and political action. Okay? Now, policy without party cults. Since 2008, Democrats have prioritized immigration relief and healthcare access for undocumented immigrants, while black unemployment stayed nearly double the national average under Obama. Crazy, right? If you're looking at it from a data perspective, a political policy perspective, there's no denial what's going on. And we voted for this guy, right? Republicans under Trump focused on enforcement and HBCU funding, securing 255 million annually in 2019. I remember him talking about that, right? And again, if 64% of black women are going to school, especially our young women, they're going to school, that was going to support them in their fields. Neither side has centered black women consistently. So again, I'm not saying that the policies are going to be written specifically for black women, right? Because it should be for any woman, right? If we're talking about women, women's progress in the U.S. or communities progress, right? But when we're looking at strategies and policies and we're voting, we need to make sure that we're written in those policies, with certain language, right? Not just general language, none of that. With certain language that's for American first, American first language. Let's say that it needs to be American first language, written in those policies, right? Now, that's why we vote issues and not color. So the like-minded black women, we cannot focus on color and keeping it real where we're being so emotionally manipulated because of someone's skin color. So when you do hear people from other communities complaining or just trying to sound the alarm too, in a way, like low key, some people, I ain't gonna say all of them, have been trying to sound the alarm. It's like, yo, stop looking at color, stop looking at color, stop looking at color. Because under the Obama administration, he pivoted to immigrants. And then when Biden came, anything that Trump did, Biden came and he refocused back on immigrants and he let a bunch of immigrants flood in. So, some of y'all ain't gonna see it that way, but he could have stopped some of that stuff. The inflow that was coming in, man, and they were coming in not across the right areas of the border. You have the Democrats pushing this separation from families and trying to make it seem like it's the same as, the slavery that was going on here in America, like all this type of stuff. And we're just like, oh, Jesus, oh, pray and all. Like, girls, we have to stop it. America first. There's nothing wrong because you're from here. This is your country. Blood, sweat, and tears went into this country, especially you as a Black American woman. So do not, vote in vain. Do not do any of that stuff in vain, right? We don't have to struggle if we become more educated about our moves here. Now, whoever funds maternal health, storefront safety, and Black women's entrepreneurship gets the support, period. Period. We are not, again, we're not doing charity anymore. We've done charity. You're not about to be rewarded for that. You're not getting rewarded for it, obviously. You're waiting for some heaven. Ma'am, you can do it here. Why does everyone else get to enjoy it on this earth living and you just, sit back and say, oh, we the chosen ones, or, because we're cursed, believing these things about yourself, already defeating yourself. You're already defeating yourself when you're saying that type of stuff or letting a subset of a community promote that. You're already defeating yourself when you don't have to. Like, this is not new to us Black women. I'm telling you, none of this stuff is new. We just gotta figure it out for these modern times and for the country that we're in right now. Now, this is just something I'm putting out there. You don't have to follow it, but this is just an idea of, an idea to income. So let's look at the first 90 days. Now, day one, you can form the circle and sign the bylaws. Day 30, fund the first entrepreneur who can open quickly. Day 60, lock trade agreements with non Black suppliers operating on your corridor. Day 90, launch with security, insurance, and prepaid memberships. Memberships is a huge thing. Within 3 months, you've moved from idea to functioning system. This is how Asian, Latina, and African women built resilience. This is how we must move from now on. Like, period. Black women, like-minded black women must move in this order, this fashion, moving forward. It's not about the counterparts. It's not about, oh, we got to do this. Stop when you're thinking about crime, it can't be to protect nobody because it's affecting your money. The reason why you're not getting money like we should be getting money is because you're worried about things and not the progress of yourself, not the education, not your mindset, protecting people, letting the media manipulate you, letting people internally and amongst us, they're literally manipulating you, man, literally manipulating you. And it's like, no, you need to go deal with those consequences if you did X, Y, Z. If you broke into a black woman's shop, no, you shouldn't be getting away with that, right? We should, and I'm telling you, since COVID, and I already knew some stuff before about our counterparts, but it really ramped up, right? So you need black women to understand who's saying what, the accounts, understand the people behind it, because some accounts I know that they are our counterparts, no matter how they're trying to hide it. Like, I know how we talk. I'm sorry, it's not going to be a lot of people who are linguistically literate to know how to talk like us. I'm just being real. When we're talking about linguistics, not on the same page, right? So this is something that we have to look at when we're talking about moving forward, Black women, and working with other women of other communities to help uplift us, right? It's about time. It's that time, okay? Now, sovereignty at sunrise. As I close here, the gate rattles up again, but now there's a QR code. Join the circle, book the apprenticeship, support the membership. Next door, a Black women's clinic opens. Around the corner, a distributor bearing our name unloads boxes of for 3 shops, excuse me. This isn't fantasy I'm painting. It's what happens when we readopt collective capital, demand trade reciprocity, and map our risk strategically. Black women built economies before. We will build them again. This time, we keep the power, the profits, and the sovereignty at sunrise. Thank you for tuning into my presentation. Please like, share, and subscribe. I will try to add the link to this presentation. I appreciate you guys, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day.